Krishna Premanande, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Namne Gaurati Sinamaha. Okay. Daivi Yesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Durachaya, Mameva Ye Prapadyante, Maya Metam Darantite, Namam Duskritino Muda, Prapadyante Naradamaha, Maya Ya Parita Jnana, Asuram Bhava Mashitaha, Chaturvidya Bhajante Mam, Jana Sukritarjuna, Arto Jigyasa Artarti, Gyani Cha Bharatarshava, Tesham Gyani Nitya Yukta, Eka Bhakti Vishishyate, Priyo Hi Gyani Notyartam, Aham Sacha Mama Priya, Udara Sarva Evaite, Gyani Tvatmaivate Matam, Astita Sahi Yuktatma, Mamevanutamam Gatim, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, Yanavamam Prapadyate, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Samahatma Sudorlabaha, Kamaistaiste Vitta Jnana, Prapadyante Nyadevataha, Tam Tam Niyamam Astaya, Prakritya Niyatasvaya. Okay. Do we have a volunteer to read those translations? And welcome to Kanakalata, who's just joined. And here in the 3D world, we have Deva Priya, Devidasi, and Nanda Krishna Prabhu. So, anyone want to volunteer? Gangalila, do you have your copy in front? Oh, you're eating. Okay. Roger, do you have a copy? Who has a copy in front of them? Kanakalata. Okay, I'm just going to read then. So from verse 14, my alluring, trimodal, illusory potency is practically insurmountable. However, those who take shelter in me can overcome this powerful obstacle. So this verse we closed with some discussion of, I believe, in our last meeting. And this, we've been bringing up this idea of personalism, right? The more personal you become in your conception, the closer you come to Krishna consciousness. So it's like, from the Vedic perspective, everything's personal. And going deeper within the personal idea, you come closer and closer to Krishna consciousness. So, Maya, right, this bewildering, remote energy that, we may perceive it like that, this distant entity, this enemy, is working against us, right? This bewildering force that's making our lives difficult, this Maya, this illusory energy. She's actually a person. And not only that, she has a boss. She's working under someone, and that's Krishna, right? So Krishna is saying, there's this phrase here, Mama Maya, my Maya. She's not acting independently. It's not like she gets a kick out of making people's lives difficult. It's not like that. But she's a very faithful servant of her beloved Lord. She wants to serve Krishna. And ultimately, she's trying to help us. Someone was asking me this question, like how can we see Maya in a positive light? How can we understand her position within the broader whole? She's providing the quality control system, making sure, we're really ready. As we're approaching the higher plane, we need to be sure that we're ready for that it's a system of purification. Like if an examination is presented in front of you, it's not, that examination is not there to just tax your brain for the sake of taxing your brain. It's for the sake of your growth and your development. So these challenges, tests, distractions that come from Maya, they're ultimately helping us and making us stronger and helping to clarify within us what it is that we really want and need. We ultimately realize that whatever Maya Devi, has to offer, it's not in the interest of our true self. So we have to come to that conclusion ourselves. That's why we need options. And that's why Krishna provides us with options. We're all about options here. So Krishna says, Mama Maya, this Maya of mine is very difficult, almost durataya, almost impossible to overcome. However, if you surrender to me, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tadan, you can very easily cross over. There's no problem. Krishna can give one glance, one nod, snap one finger, and it's all over. No. Although more precisely, it is Nityananda Prabhu. And this is actually a point about Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is very general on many points. On many points, Bhagavad Gita in some ways is like an introduction to the Krishna worlds, the Krishna version. It's an introduction. And then when you go on to Srimad Bhagavatam and other texts of our gurus, then you get more refined understanding of many things that are indicated in Bhagavad Gita. So we know that actually Nityananda or Baladev, the first expansion of Krishna, who appears as the brother of Krishna, and particularly Nityananda, who's in the mood of mercy, distribution, particularly he's playing that role of removing that veil of Maya. And this is mentioned in some of the prayers and songs of our gurus, our acharyas. We were singing the other day that beautiful song called Kobe Nityananda More Kori Noya Charaya. It's a very beautiful saying, like, when will Nityananda Prabhu mercifully, remove that veil of Maya? And then when that veil has been lifted, then I can see, then I can have true vision. Andibutta Chakshujar Vishaya Dulite Kemone Se Paratatva Kaibe Dekite is a Bengali expression we hear from our gurus. That, when the dust of illusion is covering our eyes, how can we expect to see that supreme truth? So when the Lord gives that order, then we can see very clearly. That dust will be clear, that veil will be lifted, and we can see very clearly. And in the meantime, sometimes we just have to hold on for dear life. Sometimes that's the best we can do. Just hold on, wait for that moment. That's also a kind of test, right? Even if we're facing difficulties, we're holding our strength, maintaining our faith. Even if it's all not a bed of roses, not just a bed of roses all the time. We're facing challenges. We're still holding on. We're keeping the faith. That is also a kind of test. Okay, so Sharanagati, surrender. This is the key. This is everything. Everything will come through that. And, we can also mention in this regard that, through there are different Vedic practices, right? Like in the line of yoga, austerity, meditation, austerities, different expressions, different forms of renunciation. Through all of these types of practices, we can temporarily become free from the influence of Maya. It's a temporary thing. But it's ultimately artificial. To not do something is ultimately artificial, right? And so it's not sustainable. And you hear throughout the Vedas, there are many stories of great sages who, like there's one of a sage, I forget his name, but he was underwater in meditation for so many years. And then he was agitated by seeing some fishes mating. And then he ended up running out and marrying like 50 princesses, and all these kinds of things go on. There's even the kind of like an ongoing story with Lord Indra. Lord Indra, he's the king of heaven, and he's a little paranoid that people are trying to steal his position as the king of heaven. And, there's some justification. Often there are people trying to steal his position. But sometimes what he'll do, if he sees that someone is acquiring some subtle power, Like if someone's absorbed in deep tapasya and deep austerities and meditation, and they're acquiring some subtle power, then he begins to feel threatened. He becomes afraid. And so what he'll do sometimes, it's very funny, he'll send some very beautiful dancing girl, some apsara, to distract that sage, from his meditation. It goes on all the, you hear so many instances of it. Yesterday, Chintamani coined a very funny expression. He said, "Don't be sorry, stay brahmachari." So this is the point, right? That renunciation is, because it's not natural to our intrinsic self, intrinsic nature. It's artificial. It's not sustainable. And you may be some great renunciate for so many ages of time, but some little distraction may come eventually and take you off the course. So what is the real solution? Right? Muktir hidvanya tadupam sarupena vyavastiti. Once you've entered the other side, once you've entered the plane of dedication, that means sharanat, then you're safe. Then you're safe. Then you're in the shelter of a higher power, and then you're safe. And you're acting in consonance with your true nature as a dedicating agent. So that's sustainable. It's not something that's going against your nature. So Sharanagati is the only solution. Self-giving, self-sacrifice, self-surrender. This is the true solution. So this is a very important verse, this number 14, quoted many times by our gurus. Anyone want to make any comment or question at this point, or should we continue? Okay.
Yes, me. I'd like to make a comment. For my song, I feel like when you share the reference, that it'd be nice if you use the melody, because part of the song, oh Jai Vishakadini Ki Jai, yay garland. But yeah, part of the song is the melody as well, the humor, the like crazy dance and the.
Okay.
Not Vishaka style. Don't be sorry, stay brahmachari. Don't be sorry. Okay, love you guys.
Stay brahmacharini.
Yeah, but what am I gonna say? Sarini? Like we're mixing English and Sanskrit. It's the best we can do.
Thank you, Chintamani.
I thought about that too, but thank you. This verse, what you just shared about that, totally blew my mind, and I was just like laughing how you talk about these, like it's one thing I can read it in a book, but when Vishaka is expressing like, oh, this is happening, actually he's got a right to be concerned because people try to steal his position all the time. It's like she's talking about her uncle or something, like she gets it. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chintamani. Okay, so moving on to verse 15. These 4 kinds of wrongdoers do not surrender unto me. Fruitive workers comparable to animals, fallen persons who take the highest path devotion, but later reject it, considering it inadequate or worthless, those whose knowledge is covered by illusion, Maya. Despite their scriptural study, they consider that only the form of Lord Narayan is worshipable, and they think that Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, and other factual forms are merely mortal. And the demoniac, impersonalists who dismember my form by their arrows of false logic, resembling demons like Jarasandha. Next verse. O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, 4 kinds of persons have the fortune to worship me. The afflicted, the seeker of knowledge, the seeker of happiness, and the self-realized. So these are all, quite well-known verses. And this is an interesting point here, right? That there may be many different reasons why somebody approaches the Lord for shelter. But we're not we can also add, we're not examining that too closely. It's better that we don't. We don't need to, give a questionnaire to everyone who enters into the door. Why exactly you're here? What are your motivations? How long are you going to be here? We don't need to examine that. Why? Why is it not that important in the end? Because it may start out with one motivation, it will be transformed into something else. So the points mentioned here, artha, artatika, jigyasa, and jnani. So artha is someone who's suffering. Someone who's suffering. And this is a common idea, right? There's this expression that came out during the war, perhaps the Second World War, maybe the first. But there are no atheists in the trenches, right? It's a natural thing that if you're in a condition of great suffering, you just like have to believe in some higher power. Like, how else are you going to survive? And there are some people who talk about like a convenient theism, right? I believe Srila Sridhar Maharaj uses this term, imaginary theism. There are philosophers who have discussed this, like how religion can be like provide a support system for a healthy society, right? And how governments may employ religion to help govern their people better. Like put the fear of God into people and get them to do what you want. There's this idea of what theism is about, which is sad. But anyway, some people they genuinely turn to the Lord in moments like that, and it may not be the best motivation to do something, right? Because you're afraid or because you're suffering. That's not the highest reason to do something. That's a very basic motivation, but it's something, right? It's like we need to get on the boat, and why exactly we're getting onto the boat, that's not so important, but you get on the boat and the boat's going to take you to the right destination. So persons may, I'm reminded there's this famous British man, actually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj tells of this story in, I believe, Sartre Shri Krishna. What is his name? His name ultimately was like Prema. Was it Krishna Prema or something? He ended up becoming this well-known sadhu in India. But the story, many of you know the story. He's fighting during the Second World War. His plane was shot down. He was a pilot. His plane was shot down. And he was like he was like on the border. What are the exact details? Like he was close to the German border. And he wasn't sure exactly where he was going to land, something like that. But he prayed, so he got shot down, he's falling. And as he's falling, he prayed to the Lord, please protect me, please save me. And perhaps it was just the fact that he'd been shot down. It wasn't anything to do with the border. Being shot down was enough. You remember that story?
Yeah, he says if there is a God, and I'm saved in this situation, and I land on the other side of the border that's not,
so there was
German
a border
side,
involved.
Yeah. Then he says, I'll devote my life to him. If I'm saved, there is a God. If I awake from this crash, I'll devote my life.
Right.
To that God.
That's right. Yeah.
Then he goes to some bishops and he asks, like where, I want to see God, He's like, oh, like what you're asking for, and we can't really provide that, but you should go to India, there's sadhus there that talk about this process that helps you obtain that vision, of God. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite stories.
Nice, you could remember it well.
I'm sitting here in the Sprinter van where Ananda Krishna, who I know whose voice that is now, and I see his book he was just reading that he left on the desk here.
Oh, you left your book to tell the story in Ananda Krishna.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to. I left it by the.
Oh, he left it on purpose.
And he left a little clover. He found the 4-leaf clover.
So
this, precious.
So this maybe his name became Krishna Prema. So his whole motivation started out, with this feeling of fear, right? And reaching out to God. If you're really there, please save me, and I promise I'll give my whole life to you, right? And he ends up in India, and he ended up becoming, a great devotee. He did follow through with that. He ended up connecting with some Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and he joined the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, his motivation started out from a very base, with a very base motivation, but it blossomed into something genuine and beautiful and wonderful and authentic. So, why, what reason, which we may come, we don't need to examine too much. The main thing is that we are approaching the Lord, and he'll pick it up from there. He can purify us. The sadhus, the Vaishnavas can purify us of whatever lower, tendencies or lower reasons may have been behind it. There's also this nice quote of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I believe in Subjective Evolution, where he says, the origin of our faith may be with the intellect, may be in the intellect, right? We hear the philosophy, it convinces our intellect, and then some bud of faith may start to sprout. So he says the origin of our faith may be with the intellect, but that won't be the end, right? That won't be the final destination. And then, of course, this is the challenge of the preacher, right? The person who's distributing, sharing the message. How can I market this in such a way that people may be hooked, right? May be attracted from whatever point they're at, they can be attracted. The whole Vedic system is working like this, right? And this whole discussion reminds us of these 4, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our gurus, he speaks about these 4 motivations which are behind every action in this world. Fear, which we've just been discussing, gain, prospect, then duty and love, right? So fear, gain, duty, love. These are the 4 motivations which are behind every action in this world. And the Vedas are working with this. Religion in general is working with this. How can we hook people? And it's actually it's a lower minded person who needs fear to motivate them to do good. Like do good or you're gonna get beaten. Do good or you're gonna suffer karma, right? Rather than just do good for the sake of good, And then there's also do good because you're gonna get something. So the Vedas, the Vedas are very accommodating in that sense. Like, it's okay. Like, we don't mind. Like, whatever your motivation is, like, just get on the boat. We can work with that, whatever it is. We can purify you. The saints can purify you. So we don't need to analyze too much. It's an organic, moving, living system. And there's space for everyone to become purified, upgraded. Okay, so we can go on to verse 17. Of these 4 types of devotees, best is the self-realized person who is my pure devotee, and whose consciousness is fully absorbed in me. For I, Shamasundar, am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. Verse 18, certainly they are all noble souls dear to me. Yet the spiritually self-realized soul is as beloved to me as my own self. For he has given his heart to me as his only shelter and ultimate goal of life. Now let's see here, trying to see what is the word here. So, it's, Krishna is saying here that, all of these persons, he's describing them as noble souls, like anyone who's making any approach to the Lord, that is something to be honored. They obviously, that would only be possible if they also have some spiritual fortune behind them. They have some grace behind them. So they're all worthy of honor, and they're all dear to me. But there's also gradation. He's also pointing that out. And then this verse number 19, after many births, the enlightened soul, blessed with devotional association, realizes that everything is of the nature of, subordinate to Vasudev. This is the Lord. And thus he surrenders unto me. Such a great soul is very rare. And this is another, all of these verses, they're quite well known and quoted by our gurus, including this one. Coming to verse 20, persons misled by worldly desires, being governed by their own natures, worship other godly personalities like the sun god and the many demigods, adopting the corresponding rituals to attain their objectives. Does anyone have any comment or question at this point, or should we continue with our reading? And welcome to Ajita Krishna Prabhu, who's also just joined us.
Dandavad, Stevie, Dandavad.
Dandavad Prabhu, nice to have you with us. Okay, so we'll pick up, we can all chant this from, we'll go from, let's say, 21 to, let's go 21 to 25. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shadaya chitamichati tasya chalam shadam tameva vidadamyaham sataya shadaya yuktas tasya danamihate labate chatata kaman mayaiva vihitan hitan antavatu phalam desham tadvavatya pamedasam Devan deva yujo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi avyaktam vyaktamappanam manyate mama buddhayaha param bhavam ajananto mama vyayam anutamam naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritaha mudoyam nabhijanati lokamam ajamavyayam. Okay, we can read those translations. According to a person's desire, as his faith grows to worship a particular demigod, I, as the super soul in his heart, make his faith strong in that demigod, representing a form of me. His faith nourished by me, such a devotee continues worshiping the deity of that demigod and attains all his desired objects from that deity. Again, this happens by my sanction alone, since I am the super soul, situated within the heart of the demigod too. But the fruit obtained by those unwise worshippers of the demigods is temporary. They reach the gods they worship, but my devotees come to me. So, these verses here, they're not perhaps so relevant to a Western audience. And welcome to Jayadev Prabhu, who's also just joined us. But in the Vedic culture, this is very pervasive, and I think most of our friends here are more or less familiar with this whole concept. But these devas, they are like caretakers of the mundane plane. And they have particular roles, and they have particular roles in connection with the running, the maintenance of the material universes. And they're, Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of wealth, and so on and so forth, right? And so there is a it's a widespread practice in the Vedic culture to worship these devas, Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, right? That, if one wants some particular results, then one will worship this deity who's particularly delegated to that area, right? And this whole system, this whole practice has its place, right? Because at least it's encouraging a regulated life, not just random, whimsical acts of enjoyment, right? Selfish enjoyment. But this is encouraging some type of regulated life. It's encouraging this mentality that we're not independent, right? But there are guardians above us. All these resources are not just existing for us to exploit according to our whim, but there's a proprietor of these things. And so, this whole system has its place. But if one is interested in a deeper conception of truth, and as one becomes more disinterested from temporary material fruits, then it no longer has relevance. And so Krishna is explaining here, I'm really at the back of all of this. These demigods have power because I'm supplying it to them. And even their faith in that demigod is being strengthened by me, he's saying here. And we've just started our Brahma Samhita book club on Wednesdays. And we've been discussing this point. Brahma Samhita is very helpful because it's given, last night we were also discussing, and actually a very nice analogy. I was inspired by a very nice analogy. The Vedas are giving us like a list of characters, right? We're introduced to this medley of different characters, right? There's Lord Brahma, there's Shiva, there's Vishnu, there's Lakshmi, there's Krishna, there's Ramachandra, there's Nrsingadev, there's Ganesh, right? It's endless. 333 million gods, right? Something like that is mentioned. We're just actually being told about a few of them. So the Vedas are introducing us to this list of characters, but we don't know what the story is. We don't really know who is. It's like before you go to watch a movie, then you may just look at the list of characters, and you're not really going to get an idea of who's who, who's really the central figure. What are the nuances of the different relationships? You won't know that until you actually watch the movie. You get an idea of what the narrative actually is. Otherwise, it's going to be all wonky. It's going to be all out of perspective, right? So Brahma Samhita, Srimad Bhagavatam, they're giving that perspective. Where should everybody be placed? So from our perspective and those of our gurus, Krishna is in the center, and all of these, devas, they are ultimately serving him and empowered by him to do their respective services. And so then what is this famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam? I've forgotten right now. Achute ja. But saying, just give your water to the root of the tree. How does it go? I don't know if anyone here knows that verse. If I could hear the first word, it'd probably come. But it's a famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, saying if you want to water a tree, you water the root, right? You don't water the leaves or the branches or the flowers, but you water the root. If you are hungry, you put food to your stomach. You don't put food to your ear, to your eye, to your nose, And from that central point, right, that the nourishment will be distributed appropriately. So this is the idea of Krishna consciousness. Come to a central conception of the absolute. Give your energy to the central conception of the absolute. Give your energy to the center, to the root. And from there, it will be distributed according to his desire. That energy will be distributed appropriately. So this is the vision of Krishna consciousness. Okay, and then let's see. I don't know if we read, I think we read 23. Then 24, Krishna speaking, my eternal super excellent nature, my form, qualities, activities, and pastimes are all transcendental. But unwise persons cannot know the truth. And they think the formless Brahma took birth in Vasudev's cell as an ordinary human being. So, this is also part of knowing the characters, but not knowing the story, this idea that, right, because the Vedas describe these different manifestations of the divine, right? And three principal, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, right? But which has the central role, if there is a central role even, that's not clear. In a scattered way in different scriptures and different texts, they're mentioned. You hear about Krishna and his kind of sketchy play going on in this cowherd village. Like, what's that all about? We're not so sure. This little blue boy. And we hear about this almighty Vishnu, who's much more impressive, 4 arms. He's got 4 arms, come on. Like, it's a deal breaker here. We hear about Ramachandra, who's very righteous. So, so sometimes there's this idea, not sometimes, it's actually quite common, that this Brahman, the Brahman is this formless entity, formless entity of light and consciousness. So there's often this is a popular idea that this is the central, most original expression of the divinity. And then sometimes that formless entity chooses to take on a form for some play, but that Brahman is a higher manifestation. So this is being mentioned in this verse, that this formless Brahman is appearing as a human-like form, but the Brahman is a higher manifestation, which we cannot subscribe to. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes this point in one place, how can it possibly make sense that a less sophisticated entity is able to produce a more sophisticated entity? Think about it. What is the Brahman? It's like a void. It's a static plane. It's just a sheet of oneness. Think about it. That's less developed than something that has form, that has variety, that has personality, that has emotion, feeling, movement, ideas, beauty, charm, all these things. That is a highly sophisticated entity. So how can a less sophisticated entity be the source of a more sophisticated entity? Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes this argument. Rather, it makes more sense to be the other way around. A greater being can easily produce something of an inferior nature, But for something of an inferior nature to produce something of a superior nature, that's actually impossible. It's not possible. We are such highly complex, sophisticated beings. How could our source be a sheet of oneness? So we see it the other way around. That, Krishna in a less developed manifestation is Brahman. And actually, if we're really getting to the point, that Brahman is just it's his halo, it's his effulgence, it's the light around his body. And I forgot to mention, I'm in Tijuana. This is a Jai Balai Prabhu. Please give your blessings.
And us everyone, and up glories to Srila Gurudev and all the devotees.
Jai Balai Prabhu is the leader here, and very great, very saintly devotee, very beloved in our community in Mexico and around the world, actually. We think of him as the embodiment of humility, tolerance, and respect. Okay, so we'll just read this next translation, and we can open up the board for discussion. By my sweet will, remaining concealed by my own potency, I am not manifest to anyone and everyone. So the foolish cannot know me, the son of Vasudeva, unborn and ever existent, in my divine Shama Sundar form of beautiful feature, like a blackish rain cloud. So Yoga Maya, right? We were discussing at the beginning of our meeting, Maha Maya, right? This material energy that is deluding the souls of this world. But there's also Yoga Maya, the spiritual deluding potency, right? Actually, ultimately, we have to be in one state of illusion, either material illusion or spiritual illusion. We can take our pick. And what is the role of that spiritual illusion? Why must there be a spiritual illusion? That's to make the play more interesting for Krishna. If there's too much awareness that he's Krishna, then it spoils the story. So she's helping the members of that higher plane to see Krishna as an ordinary being, and she's also something like a stage manager, orchestrating different situations to maximize the intensity of emotion and loving exchange. So this Yoga Maya, Krishna is saying here, she's protecting, right? She has a cover over me, which is shielding my true form from persons who are not qualified for that, to see that, to perceive that. And one may say, well, why? Yesterday I was going through, there's one text of one of our gurus, and in the introduction he writes, only people who have faith and devotion to Krishna will be able to read this. Otherwise, don't read it. Just don't read it. Why? So why is there like this barrier put up? That's for our own protection, actually. Because if we're exposed to something of such a high nature, but our mentality is down here on a lower level, then we will be the loser there. We will project our lower vision on something of such a high and pure nature, and we will be the loser. So there is something of a filter system. There's a filter system in place. And that highest truth will only be revealed to us when we are really ready for that. Then everything will be given to us. Everything will be revealed to us. We hear also of this concept of a Sura Mohan, when like there's deliberately some delusion that some put in place to bewilder persons of a a materialistic or demonic mentality. You know, Srila Sridhar, he uses this phrase, he gives the analogy of a hospital, right? Have some separation, some segregation of the less diseased patients from the healthier patients. If you just it's like you throw everybody in the same room, everybody's just going to end up getting really sick, right? So better you have some segregation. You know, you have the mildly diseased, mildly infectious patients in one space, the highly contagious, highly diseased patients in another place, and then there's the middle zone, right? Then everyone has a better chance of making progress from their level. But if you just lump everyone together, then everybody's going to go down, right? Same things in school, right? They'll have like special classes for advanced students. You have special classes for not so advanced students, right? Then everybody can get the special attention, you know, that they need. You know, and everybody can make a greater amount of progress from that point. So there's also a system like that in place when it comes to spiritual progress, right? And there's some filter system. So persons who are less sincere, they'll be distracted. You know, okay, you go over here and let the more serious folks go on to the next class. Something like that. Nice to see Jayadev with us. We had some very nice programs with Jayadev in Santa Monica. And also Chintamani.
Glad to feel I could be of some use to the devotees.
Well, does anyone have, we just have a few minutes left. Does anyone have any comment or question at this point?
Yeah, Dee, I have a question.
Yes.
So we're either in Mahamaya or Yogamaya, but the four Kumaras, they're not in either Maya, right?
Right. That's a good point.
So what is their consciousness like? How are they seeing things?
Brahma Gyan. Yeah, they're seeing you could, I mean, I cannot say what their consciousness is like. I don't know. I have no idea. Some I can say something, but you know, what exactly they're experiencing and seeing, I cannot say. But let's put it like this. There's a state of being overcome by material illusion, right? There's a state of being enlightened and being able to perceive this distinction between matter and spirit, right? But then even higher than that, there's total absorption in the spirit of bhakti and devotion. You know, like the, you know, so Maha Bhagavat, right? We hear the Maha Bhagavat, the highest types of devotees. They can't distinguish between good and bad. Everything's just good. Everything's Krishna. No, which can be a little dangerous, you know, they're in this world. But they're always protected by Krishna, so it's okay. But they can't really give advice to other people. Srila Sridhar Maharaj points out, like Mother Jashoda, she's not guru material. You know? And Mother Jashoda is Krishna's mother. You know? So like, what is her position? She has the highest position, but she's not really qualified to be a guru because she's just seeing the highest vision everywhere. Everything is going to be Vrindavan. Everything is Krishna. You know, we hear that, you know, we hear some stories like of some of our the great saints in our line, you know, like one, Vamsidas Babaji, I've heard stories about him. You know, like he'll see like a train snaking on a train track, and he's thinking of the Kaliya serpent, right? This serpent, demon serpent who came to attack Krishna. You know, he sees a lamppost, and he's thinking it's a tamal tree, a tree of Vrindavan, and going to embrace it. Right? They're literally seeing Vrindavan everywhere, right? And so we hear that the Uttam Adhikar Guru, the highest type of guru who descends in this world to help the souls of this world, they actually have to come to a lower consciousness. They have to descend to a Madhyam platform in order to instruct people, right? In order to perceive what's right, what's wrong, and what's helpful, what's not helpful. No. But yes, you're correct. There is this middle zone. And I would say that, like persons in the line of Gyan, in a broad sense, that's what they're striving for, this enlightenment, where they're elevated beyond Maya. They're like in this middle zone. They haven't had entrance into the higher current, the higher flow of devotion, but they're living in awareness of spirit everywhere, and they're liberated from matter. Yes, there is that zone. So yes, you're right. There is a third zone. Does that help, Ajita Prabhu?
Yeah. Putting it in the right perspective. Just they haven't advanced as high as possible.
Yes,
Getting there.
they may be on their way. They may be on their way. Like in the case of the four Kumaras, in the case of Shukadev Goswami, we hear of these descriptions of persons who were in that kind of zone, but they weren't there out of any egoism. They were sincere seekers of truth. And once they came in connection with the current of Krishna Bhakti, they joined that flow. We hear the four Kumaras, they smelled the fragrance of the tulasi leaf coming from the feet of Krishna, and they became attracted to that, right? Shukadev Goswami, this is what we call Brahma Gyan, Brahma Gyan, fully absorbed in this awareness of Brahman, the spirit that is pervading everything, backing everything in existence. And when he he's just living in the forest in this Brahma vision, and then he hears these verses that are describing the glory of Krishna, describing personalism, right? And they're feeling the superiority of that, and they're attracted. He's attracted to that. I'm gonna end here. We will have to go in a minute or so for this meeting happening here. It's been a wonderful meeting with all of you. Thank you for your good company, and also Narottam Prabhu. Great to see you here with us. Okay, and thank you, Chintamani Devi, for hosting. Gangalila, do you want to pray us out?
Yes.
And
I do.
By the way, I'll just add, Gangalila's mother passed away yesterday morning. So everyone, please, Ushi was her name. Everyone,
Yes.
please give your prayers to her. And I'm happy we could be with her yesterday, and we shared some, spiritual vision on these things. So
Thank you. Yes, that was really actually perfect. I really don't have anything to say, but I think for some people it is Thanksgiving and gratitude. The state of gratitude is just a perfect thing to be in, if it is Thanksgiving or not. So grateful for Sadhu Sangha, for Vishaka Didi, and for life when we have it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
We love you, Gangalila.
Yay! Ananda Krishna. I got your bottle and your bag. I found it. You hid it on the balcony.
All right, thank you.
blessings.
Yeah.
Jai
Hare
Shri
Krishna.
Swami Maharaj ki jai. Shri Bhagavad Jai. All the assembled devotees, sincere seekers ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Lord
Jai.
Haribo.
Oh,
Shaka Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad.
All right, thank you.
thank you.